Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I've got a ton of details and updates about what we're getting and what's changing in the next patch for Battlefield 5. There's actually a lot of significant changes here, so you'll want to pay attention. First of all, the cool looking lunge mine that we saw in the trailer for the Pacific is not working as intended on DICE's version of the game, and they're going to delay the release of the lunge mine until essentially 6.0 update for the game in 2020. So a little bit of a delay there, unfortunately. The Fliegerfaust, that anti-air rocket launcher that has basically been dominating the sky ever since it was released and could certainly be argued that it's insanely overpowered, is getting a nerf. Well, it could be argued that it's not a nerf. They're basically changing a lot of things about it. First of all, its effective range is being increased, but the detonation range is being decreased. So you have to be more precise with it, but the range of it can actually extend a lot further than before. The fire rate is also being slowed down, and I believe there's going to be a bunch of other changes that we'll have to try and figure out once the patch launches. According to DICE, this isn't a straight nerf, but instead changes the intended role of the weapon, increasing its effective range, requiring more precision to use the weapon. Community Games is coming with the 5.2 update. I don't know if it'll be available at the launch of 5.2, but it is for sure launching in December. This is probably going to be one of the next major updates that impacts the way people are able to play Battlefield 5 in terms of joining custom servers with custom map rotations and whatever sort of rule set the server designer wants to employ there. So this will be an incredible update. Looking forward to it in December. Now, Wake Island is not launching directly when the 5.2 patch drops, but shortly after, likely in early December. So if anyone was afraid that we were going to get this at the very last second, hopefully it means that the map is all put together and we'll get a nice, clean release of Wake Island early December. DICE is also implementing a new highlight system. This is actually really big news for the game. Visibility has been an ongoing issue since launch. Within 15 meters of an enemy player, an icon will appear over their head if you look at them. So this will help you sort of identify enemy soldiers in sort of close range environments. Room clearing, that kind of stuff. It should be much easier to tell friend from foe. Within 5 meters or closer, an icon will be permanently appeared over an enemy player. So somebody prone in a bush that you're like literally walking over that you couldn't see before, now they'll have an icon. So camping will still be effective, using visual cover will still be effective, but if somebody's looking directly at you at 15 meters or closer, they'll be able to see you, and if somebody's 5 meters or closer, well, there's going to be an icon. So you better shoot them before they get that close, or prepare for an even firefight. In addition to this, below the new icons, the enemy player's health will be displayed if they are hurt. This will give you key information on like, hey, I need to shoot this guy one more time to get them killed. This is an interesting update to the game, and it should allow for a bit more planning in your firefight or maybe smarter target prioritization. DICE also wants to make it clear that this is not a return of spotting. The goal of this system is to improve visibility without making major changes to the game, and that they're going to rebalance it based on player feedback, if any. DICE is also making significant changes to the time to kill mechanics on most guns in the game. The weapons that are not affected by this update are bolt-action carbines, which would be for the medic class, sniper rifles, and anti-material rifles. Everything else, though, is going to see a significant change to the damage of their weapons, more specifically at further ranges. That's what's getting hit the most, so you're going to need more bullets to kill the further away your target is, and a lot of them are also going to see probably one extra bullet to kill in close range. This is a big change in the time to kill mechanics. It'll probably become much more similar to Battlefield 1, but this can't be seen as a overall nerf to most weapons, as DICE is also changing recoil, bullet velocity, and fire rate values for a lot of these weapons that are being affected. So in a sense, whatever gun you enjoyed before or were running around with and really got a good feeling for, well, there's a good chance that there's a lot of things different with it after this patch launches. They'll also be adjusting specializations and ammo counts on a lot of these weapons as well. For the most part, I think I do support a slightly slower TTK. Initially, I didn't like it about Battlefield 1, but Given DICE's way that they design maps now in games, where it's less about cover and proper peeking techniques and really a lot more about crossing bigger areas of land and stuff like that, it gives them more flexibility to, well, essentially design maps with less cover and more open movement tactics. And that was important for Battlefield 1 to be successful. And Battlefield 5, again, has similar map design. And so it's going to need slower TTK to make it more playable. This is a huge change for the game, though. Making such a significant change to weapon balance this late in the game definitely shows how poorly balanced and poorly designed the game was at launch. But the fact that DICE is trying to remedy this now is promising. I'm happy about it. A lot of games will just be set in their ways and be like, hey, we're not going to touch that because that's way too big of an element to mess with. But that now that DICE is actually messing with it, I'm happy about it. Guns will be more accurate, but they'll require more bullets to kill. Overall, this should be increasing the skill ceiling. Now, DICE is also stressing that this is not a return of TTK 2.0, something that the community was definitely against. It's kind of crazy to think about how many changes this game has gone through. But basically, it's not going to feel quite as sluggish as before. It's going to mostly affect the range performance of weapons and allow DICE to balance weapons more appropriately for their intended ranges. Generally, I do like these kind of balance changes as long as they're not too strict. I think when Battlefield 1 first launched, it just felt like you were going to lose at a specific range no matter what if your opponent had a better weapon than you. So as long as it's not too strict and you still feel like you have a fighting chance, even if you're not at your intended engagement range, then I'm on board with it. Flares. Flares are seeing a nerf. They just saw a big buff and they're seeing a slight nerf to that buff. So basically DICE just overcorrected for the power of flares and now they're reducing it slightly. The radius is being slightly reduced and the time alive is being slightly reduced. They'll still be better than they were before the previous patch though. A really big UI element is coming into the game, something that a lot of Battlefield fans have been asking for a long time, and I'm actually really excited about this, but you will now have an indicator above your minimap if you are spotted by the enemy team. So spotting now, since there is no traditional 3D spotting in Battlefield 5, if there's an enemy flare or a recon spotting scope, or you're shot by a recon using the spotting ability, you'll now see the element appear above your minimap. Also, if you're in a situation that turns off your spotting, like going into a smoke grenade, the UI will update to show that you are no longer spotted. This is great, actually. I like this a lot because you really do have to be super in tune with Battlefield 5's nuances to sort of understand when you might have been spotted. Like, I understand at this point if I take a shot by a sniper, there's a good chance that I've been spotted, so I may as well just duck behind cover and not peek up for a little bit, try and wait for that spot to dissipate because it's just too dangerous if an entire enemy team knows your exact location. So this will give a lot more players, especially new players, basically a good idea of when they're spotted and when they should move out from behind cover. It'll also give us a lot more agency over probably identifying enemy flares in the sky. You can shoot flares out of the sky, but a lot of people aren't always looking up in the sky to see them in the first place, so they don't know. But if all of a sudden a spotting icon appears on your minimap, there's probably going to be a lot more people playing, well, more intelligently with a better knowledge of why they're being spotted, why they're being seen. DICE is also making a big overhaul to the way that armor works in armored vehicles like tanks and stuff. The amount of damage you can deal and receive in a tank is now highly dependent on the angles that they are when getting shot. So perfectly perpendicular angles on both the front and side will deal massive damage, where slightly off angles will do normal damage, and angles at under 30 degrees, I think, will do ricochet damage, which will be significantly less than normal damage. The rear of a vehicle will do a lot more damage than before, and you don't have to be necessarily perfectly perpendicular to do massive damage on the rear of a vehicle. So if you sneak up behind a tank, you're going to be doing a lot more damage than normal. They're also looking at a few bugs with ricochet mechanics. I would say that this is all an interesting new mechanic to the game, but it's basically exactly what we've had in older Battlefield titles. Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, I think, had very similar armor deflection values and stuff like that. If DICE can more standardize this, and better communicate it to the player base. That would be the best thing. I think the hardest thing with vehicle and armor combat right now is that so little of how things work is properly communicated to the player base. And even people who've been playing for a long time are like, oh, what? I didn't know it did that much damage, or that there was a weak spot here. And there just isn't any decent tutorial system in the game that sort of explains that to you. So slowly but surely, it seems like tank combat might get better. AT mines are also seeing a bit of an overhaul. They're reducing the amount of damage they can do to vehicles, but kind of upping the rate at which they'll disable parts. But they're also increasing the amount of AT mines that you can place. Previously, you could place up to 3. Now you can place up to 6 AT mines. So that'll change things up a bit more. You'll get hit by them more often, but insta-gibbed probably less. Dynamite is also seeing some damage changes. Nothing really specific talked about here, but I imagine it might get stronger against vehicles. They're also doing something called Operation Sandbox, which is being headed by David Serlin to improve areas of the game players have expressed issues with, focusing on improving the core experience. Team balancing is also being looked at as part of this program. Thank God for that. I hope this means we're getting like a lot of the core fixes and mechanic updates that we've been wanting since the game launches. It sounds like good news, but it also sounds like something that might be a bit more far off in the future in terms of actually seeing the effects of it. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's any sort of major performance issues being addressed in 5.2, which is a bit of a bummer. The frame rate for the game has dropped significantly over the past several patches, and this is something that I've talked about with a lot of other people playing Battlefield, and it almost seems to be universally community-wide that everybody's just getting less FPS than before. This is something on DICE's radar, and they are looking at addressing it as soon as possible. It just won't be included in the next patch. And that wraps it up for this news post on the 5.2 update. DICE will be releasing patch notes before it goes live, so we'll have even more specific information on what's changing. But this is huge news for Battlefield 5. Very, very big updates to the core mechanics of Battlefield 5 in this patch. The gun changes are massive. Obviously, Fleerfast is huge for both pilots and infantry. And the spotting thing is really exciting as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff here, things that I'm looking forward to trying out. And it seems like good news for DICE and Battlefield 5 in general. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.